Hi there. I'm Abigail Morgan Prout, and I am a front of the room faculty for CTI. And I've been with CTI for a long time as a student. I first took my fundamentals in 1999 and have been a CPCC since 2000, and am delighted to collaborate with Jeff Jacobson, um, my partner in crime here today. And yeah, over to you, Jeff.
Hey everybody, Jeff Jacobson, partner in crime with Abigail today. I've also been a student and a faculty member at CTI for a long time. I started in 1997 and became a front of the room leader for CTI in 1999. CPCC also lead the leadership program and excited to talk about all things coactive, all things leadership related and coach related. And today, obviously, we're talking about this idea of courage and vulnerability.
So when I first was approached to lead this conversation for this recording, I was like, I wonder who I would most want to lead this with. And my experience with Jeff Jacobson has just been always consistently courageous and vulnerable as co-leads, but also friends. Like I find
Mm.
myself saying things in your presence that I didn't even know that I knew or wanted to say. So I'm just delighted that we're collaborating today.
Me too. Me too. And when you asked, I'm like, sure, courage and vulnerability, great topics, easy, we know a lot. And then you and I met a couple times before today. When we got into this, the more we realized this is it could be academic and sort of structured or quite courageous and vulnerable. And we've chosen the latter. And I don't know, I just feel excited and a little nervous.
Yeah. I mean, I think partly where we've landed is like, as coaches, you guys know a ton about um, holding courageous space for clients. It's really important that we open up this space so that clients feel safe to both say and do the courageous thing, and so that they feel like they can be vulnerable with themselves and with their coach. But what's missing in that component is like, what's the role of the coach with courage and vulnerability?
Well, I like what you said today and also the other day. You said, look, there's so much that's already out there about courage and vulnerability and the power of it as a human, as a leader, as a manager, as a parent, even as a client, someone being coached. And we didn't want to regurgitate all that because it's stuff we already know. But
Yeah.
how, like, as you said, what do we wanted to talk about what's the role of it as the coach, especially around vulnerability, because we had that notion. We think that you could do decent coaching and be courageous, not that vulnerable, and it's good. And in a way, maybe sort of a little distant from the person you're coaching, in this case, the client, to lob some courageous, powerful questions or some things you notice, good to go. But what's it like if you're closer within this idea of an empowered circle? And instead of you being the one just bringing the courage, that you bring a sense of vulnerability and courage to feed that empowering circle. You and I both noticed the feeling of vulnerability being inside with the client versus outside at a distance.
Yeah, and I think that the more that you coach, um, you can start to feel how how much of a participant you are inside of the the empowering circle. And
Yeah.
we wanted to kind of define, because that idea of this empowering circle, we just wanted to kind of define that as like, it's the space of the relationship, it's the designed alliance, but it's also kind of like a river or a circulatory system that is alive, and it has juice and connectivity, but it really does depend on the coach to bring energy to that circle. It's not just the client is creating the aliveness of that circulation. It's also the coach and the client. So, um, yeah,
We wanted to cover today a few more of these talking points and our thoughts on, all right, not just good coaching, but if you want to get to that level of greatness and more depth, what's the role of, of courage and vulnerability? A few more thoughts from us to tell you a little about what we're going to cover today. And then we wanted to do some live coaching to ideally demonstrate that. And that also means we have some talking points and an overall idea of where we're going. And we might wander or drift from that because courage and vulnerability may kick in and, instead of sticking to a script.
right. And so we really wanted to just design with you listeners that we really are committed to exploring together and opening up like new places, and we might not know exactly where we're going, so we're asking that you pay attention and watch for vulnerability and courage in both our presentation and the coaching that happens, and just see where, like, what opens up in you when we're more courageous and vulnerable, or less, like what happens for
Mm.
you, because that's information for you as a coach.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, we were talking about this yesterday. How do you know when you're coaching somebody if you're sort of on it or off it? And instead of it being this cut and dry thing, like being in it with somebody and really gauging, am I oversharing right now as the coach? And is it becoming more about me? Have I pulled away too much and I'm almost like an automaton? And so ideally, you and I are going to be showing the in and out of it today, and then they can feel it too. I think I just repeated everything you just said. I don't know why I did that.
Well, I just have to tell on myself because right before we started recording this, I just told Jeff this. I put my coffee down in the perfectly wrong place on my white carpet. And
Oh,
of course,
do you mean a brown liquid? Is that
I just knocked it over with my lamp, like literally right before I jumped on the Zoom call. So, um, I handled it, but like I'm inside of a coffee smell, and I'm inside of the vulnerability of like serious mess. Like I just created a big old mess here. Um,
and
and I just
you were trying to get the lighting right to look good on video, right?
just saying I'm inside of a very aromatic coffee experience over here, and it's not going into my body. So I just wanted to say that because
Oh.
that's my experience.
Oh, I didn't really, you knocked you don't even have any to drink.
I have no coffee. There's
Dude,
that.
there's gotta be a Zoom app where I could like pass through some tea or something. I don't
Oh
think
no.
so. Let me look at the toolbar. Yeah, nope, they don't have that. That
So
sucks.
so part of what you're saying is kind of like, how close are we as coach to the essence of connecting as humans with our clients without, like, there's a line
Yeah,
that we become more sensitive to as coaches, where it's like we want to bring our aliveness and our connectivity as a coach, as a human.
yeah.
And if we cross this line of too much of me and too much of my story, my agenda, my perspective, then the client loses their focus, they lose their agenda, and then it is not coaching anymore. So we're going to play around with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. What did you want to say about that?
Well, I mean, we're CTI trained and huge coactive fans, but for all of us coaches out there, regardless of where you did your training, we all learned in the beginning this idea of self-management. Put your opinions aside. Um, have it be about the client. Sometimes we're going to ideally say client today. Sometimes I say coachee, but we mean the person being coached. And for training, because most of us have not had that um, practice of staying fully focused on someone else and not throwing our opinions and judgments. We've all been trained in that. So what I'm about to say isn't about our coach training. I think it's about what happens in our industry in general or amongst the coaching culture over time, which is some version of, and I know this goes on for me, don't share my opinion, don't share my judgment, don't share much of anything because it's all about them. And then I create some distance and almost pull away my humanity. So, Ab, you're talking about don't cross that line and making it too much about yourself. And then also don't pull so far away that um, that you can come across as an automaton, or like we were talking about yesterday. I mean, many of us these days are so nervous and worried and frightened because of the chaos in the world and topics that are trigger point topics, and being afraid of saying the wrong thing and offending somebody, getting canceled. But we could just pull really far away. And you and I are trying to talk today about what's that sweet spot.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's different for everybody. But
Yeah.
where courage comes in is like trying to, like, getting curious about where that place is for you as a coach. Like, where is that place where you're sharing perhaps more, either energetically, verbally, emotionally, um, maybe even somatically if you're with the person. It's like, where is that edge of maybe sharing more than you're comfortable with for the sake of the space being empowered, for the circle of your relationship being empowered and nurtured and encouraged. And that is like it that keeps shifting as you mature into your style and your way of coaching. But we're here to
Yeah.
like encourage you to kind of start to move the dial a little bit towards more humanity, more warmth, more empowerment.
One example that I have is when I first got coached, very, very first. I was in my, I think, mid to late 20s, and I was all over the place around money. I didn't have much at the time, and it was a struggle. I was also aware that if I ever had too much, I'd be one of those evil people. I had that belief in there. I was confused. I really didn't know where I stood on this thing. So as I was getting coached over time, my coach and I came up with this idea of I should talk to an accountant just to see what I had. What about savings? What about taxes? All this stuff. I kept not doing it. Like one session after another, she'd say, well, how did it go with the accountant? I wouldn't have done it. And so we'd look at what was in there, what were some of my beliefs. It was some great ground, like some foundational work. But finally, like the fifth time or something, she said, how'd it go? And I said, oh, I didn't talk to the accountant because blah, blah, blah. You know what she did? She said, why don't you call me back when you find your power? And she frickin' hung up on me. It's like, and I was like, what? I was flooded. I think I was flooded with anger. I was flooded with this weird excitement, like, you can't pick up on something. And I don't know what else I was flooded with. And I called her right back. And I was angry. She was kind of angry and embarrassed. But then I was laughing because it sort of thrilled me. And she said, I don't know if I went too far. I just didn't want to keep supporting you from canceling your dreams. And I didn't know what else to do. She took a huge risk. It was vulnerable for her to do that and courageous. And it shook me up. And I don't know if I paused in that moment or a little bit later, but I called that accountant. It was one of the best things she could have done, and it scared her.
Right. And so that place of I don't know what else to do, there's that place of as a coach of like, I'm out of cards, I have to kind of cross this edge.
Yeah.
um and then there's like, and we're going to share some tips at the end of this session with you to give you some ways to notice where, like, where your courage might be pointing you to open up um, vulnerability. And in that moment, your coach was courageous. She wasn't necessarily vulnerable. She was vulnerable on the back end by saying, I
Right.
didn't know what else to do. So she kind of followed up on the back end. But I think what we're really going to open up here is, okay, so where, as coaches, where are we playing safe and holding back and being like, powerful question, observation, listening, instead of getting in there and saying the thing that really is super edgy,
Yeah.
to confront and kind of hold courage for the client, but also like what's the piece that might we might be holding back or just kind of self-managing that would actually be in like an empowering thing to say for the sake of your client, that might be something like a story that you have or an opinion that you have or a insight or something that is actually vulnerable to the coach.
Right. And she shared later, she was afraid that I would tell people that she hung up on me and that she was a bad coach. And this little bit of like, and it would get back to her husband and he'd get mad at her. And all that stuff had flashed in the moment. And she said, I got to do it anyway. And in a way, it's like she passed the baton to me because I was surprised and jolted. And I felt embarrassed that I'd not done it. When I called her back, then she admitted being embarrassed. And then I found some courage, and it was like passing it back and forth. And she still kept it for my sake, you
About
know? Yeah. And not to put you on the spot, any stories that you've got around this, or do you want to go through some of the more of the talking points?
Well, I think, the story that comes to mind for me was this was like 24 years ago. And I was coaching, I was a client, and my coach, I had been like kind of, this was my first marriage, not the marriage that I'm currently in, but I had been kind of just in this place of despair and just really having a hard time with the relationship. And I brought it as a topic many, many times to our coaching. And my coach, I will never forget this moment. The My coach lobbed this kind of like, what we would call blurting or kind of intuition impulse, and he said, "When are you going to admit that your marriage is over?" And I just remember thinking, "What the hell? Like that's not where
You
I'm
can't
at.
say that. Oh,
Then
okay. Yeah.
that's not where I'm at. Like I'm not there. How dare he come to that conclusion?" But
Yeah.
ultimately, what he was doing, and I understood this later on, ultimately, what he was doing was he was reading the level three and he was showing it to me in a really courageous way. Again, an example of courage, not necessarily vulnerability, but saying something like that opens yourself up in a vulnerable way as a coach because it's a big thing to blurt,
Yeah.
a big level three kind of like lob like that. And so
Like kind of like naming the elephant in the room or
naming
trying
it,
to.
and I had a lot of resistance, and it took me probably 4 months to get to the place of like, oh, now I'm ready to accept that that is true.
And
And
it
it's
wasn't like he pushed you into that, but he
no,
carved out some space for you to consider it.
yeah. And so like these are just it feels like these are examples of kind of like just the naming and the blurting and the courage that it takes to do that, and then the back
Yeah.
end of like staying with it and following up. Yeah.
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 I don't know about the timing of this, but I love what you said the other day about leg day. And, as coaches, don't skip leg day. You know, that idea in weightlifting, everybody wants to do the upper body, but not their legs. And Abby, you were saying, don't skip courage and vulnerability day. Like, also, I mean, this can be a tip afterwards at the end of our time today, but the blessing and the curse of doing this work is we got to keep our muscles strong so that we can be available for that level of courage and vulnerability with the people we coach. And that means when we're confronted by stuff in our life, the opportunity is to face it or to get curious about it or get some help around it. I notice when I don't do that over time, I am less courageous and vulnerable with my coachees. When I don't skip vulnerability and coaching day and my muscles are stronger, I can roll my sleeves up and get in with them better or recover when it doesn't go so well. I'm not as crusty or distant.
Hmm. What's an example of like what your leg day might look like, your vulnerability and courage day might look
Um, I mean, my partner and I talk a lot about current events. And, some new headline pops up around politics or wars going on or some social issue. And um, skipping leg day would mean I don't want to talk about that right now. We've got other stuff to do. We want to watch Netflix. Not skipping it would be for me to say to him, honey, I'm freaked out about A, B, or C. I'm freaked out about the upcoming elections. What the hell? And I don't know, and I don't have an answer for it. And he'll say, like, well, what are you afraid of? Or tell me what he's afraid of. And we even get nervous and we shake about it and we think about a bleak future, all that stuff. The next day, somebody brings up their fear about the elections. I'm just more available to be over there with them. I'm not going to try to work out my issues on
Right.
their time and also not try to shut them up.
Yeah. It reminds
How
me
about
of it reminds me of what we do in the process course around like what can't you be with, and like really expanding that so
yeah,
that so that there's just way more that we can be with, and then we can be in service of the client. Like for the sake of the client, now I can be with all, all of these other topics that I
right.
was not comfortable with. And you can feel it like when a client brings a topic that you're like, oh, I haven't worked out on this one. And like it kind of like opens you up, or kind of like stretches your capacity to be with it. um,
Totally.
but what we're talking about is like to empower this circle of the relationship. We're talking about like emotional courage. We're also talking about the ability to open up as a coach and actually share something that is connective and like might not be um, considered traditionally to be an appropriate thing to share. But
That was a
there's
nice way to say it.
well, I mean, seriously, because we, again, like at the very beginning of this talk, we talked about how we ask you as coaches to kind of like swipe left on all of your personal opinions and everything so that you can be, level two with your client, level two and three. Great. And now we're asking you to bring back way more of your humanity, because things are dynamic and intense
Yeah,
out there, and people
yeah.
need to feel like they're not talking to a chat box.
Right. A troll, a chat box. Um, oh, my went blank. Oh no, I know, I remember. You and I are not slouches in this area because we have been building our muscles for 2 decades. I notice for myself these days, with the amount of volatility and reactivity that's in the world, it is taking so much more of my own inner muscle to stay with my clients as they talk about these reactive things. Once again, I'm not a slouch in this area, and I'm really having to up my game. You're not, you too?
For sure. And I think this might be a good time maybe to jump into our um, demo,
Yeah, yeah,
because it feels like, no matter where you are in the world, we're all so much more connected through the internet and just emotionally, and like it's a global experience these days, and we're not separate from each other. And the more that we can connect to the humanity that's available, the more that we can move. And
yeah.
movement's where it's at with coaching. It's like move emotionally, move psychologically, move mentally, move physically, like move the dial. And so if
Rather
we're
than stay stagnant.
right, and if we're playing that clinical role of like, tell me more.
That's interesting for you over there in your midst of hell. What's that like?
What's that like? What's that like for you? What do what's the next step? It's just, I think the profession is asking us to up our game
Yeah.
in the connection of the circle of empowerment and participate more. And this is edgy because we were taught not to bring ourselves in. So let's go to a demo and see how
Demo.
this kind of like works out. Do you want to?
And we don't know how this is going to go, by the way. We haven't scripted this out. Like, we will now at 5 minutes in show them courage and vulnerability. In this case, we've only decided I'm going to be the coach.
Yeah.
You're going to be the client with the topic. And ideally, we'll be able to show, and I'll be able to show places of bringing more of that courage and vulnerability than maybe textbook coaching 101. Anything else you want to say about that?
No, I would just encourage people who are watching to just notice, because probably what's if you've made it this far through this video, you're probably noticing in your mind like, well, I can go this far, but I can't cross this line with my
Yeah,
client. So just hang out in that uncomfortable place of like, why not? And for the sake of what?
yeah,
Are you managing that comment, that question, that story? And actually, would it be an empowering thing to share to connect the circle of empowerment with your client and start to ask those questions more, because we're being called in as humans to engage at a more humane level with our clients.
oh, I love how you said that. Just everybody, just rewind the last 2 or 3 minutes and watch that 5 more times, and you'll be good for your future coaching. We're checking time. We'll see how this goes time wise, but I'm what, 10, 15 minutes? Is that what you're thinking?
Sure. I mean, I'm the client, so I have no idea about time. It's all you.
I love this. We're going to be courageous and vulnerable. Should we do it in 15 minutes or less or more?
12 and a half minutes of culture, courage, and vulnerability.
Okay. All right. Ugh. So let me get a little bit out of a talking heads thing, because I do want to focus on you and whatever is, I don't know, working yet these days.
Well, I've decided to bring a topic that is pretty very close to my heart right now, which is the topic of grief and death. It's a big topic, and we had a dear friend, Steve, um, die 2 days ago, and on
Oh,
the little island that I live on, one of the cultural things that we do is when someone dies, there's like an email or a call that it's like a phone tree that goes out. And the people that were closest to the person that died form an impromptu circle. It doesn't matter what the weather is doing. We go outside and we circle somewhere beautiful and we talk about the person and we just send a lot of love to their spirit so that they can move with ease and grace to the next place. And also, we give a lot of love to the person, the people, the loved ones left behind, because that's the hardest place to be. And so I got this call. We were kind of expecting that he might pass soonish because he's been in a lot of pain and not doing very well in his body, but he was super, super mentally alert and very communicative and very generous with his sharing of his demise. And so I got the call and I went to this circle and
can I just say one thing? I
Mhm.
noticed I just noticed you said a friend died, and I know you're giving some good backstory here, but like that kind of went, ugh. And like, how you doing? I know we're gonna get there, but
I think I'm relieved. I just
okay,
honestly, I'm relieved for him.
yeah,
And anytime anyone dies that I know, even if I'm not super close to them, more than anything, it's just more of like a death. It's just right in my face.
nice.
And it's
Yeah.
startling how close it is, because I am like, oh, death, death, someday, death, someday I'll
Someday
get through.
my
Yeah,
death.
like
It's out there.
out there, but it's actually right here. And um I was reminded, I think that's the main point of what I want to share, is I was really reminded of how close death is. And so we were in the circle, right?
Yeah.
Beautiful morning, talking about Steve. And at the end of the circle, his wife says, Steve's body is in the house and you're welcome to sit with him and say goodbye. And I had so many things to do. Like, I know that sounds so stupid, but I was like, it was a really busy day for me. I had clients, I had the kids to pick up in the afternoon, I had something in the evening, I had to support my husband, like all
My
whole
husband
bunch.
needs support. I can't go see a dead body.
Exactly.
I can't. I have to go to the store.
Like I have things to do on my list that are like dead body, hanging out with a dead body is not on the list. And so, I mean, I'm making fun of this, but it just really did occur to me as a choice. It wasn't like a
Oh,
cultural, like, this is what we do. You know, we go to a wake and we hang out around a dead body. That's not my culture. And so it was an option. And
yeah.
I found myself really, really looking at it and being like, I don't have to do this. This would be a lot.
Which is completely true.
I don't.
Nobody was saying in order for you to not get voted off the island.
No. It's fine if you don't want to hang out with Steve, and there is his body if you want to go hang out with him. And I literally was like, I had that like conversation with my adult. My adolescent, my inner child were like, we're out, we're peeling, let's go.
Yeah,
And my adult
go.
was like, excuse me, adults face the music and we're going in there. I felt like I had taken myself by my shoulders and kind of pivoted myself towards the door and like walked, kind of pushed myself through. And once I was in the room, I just felt so much emotion and like
Oh, yeah, yeah.
so much, so many tears, just like so many tears that I could feel them constantly moving. Like it was like a waterfall. And I just kept getting all this information about who he had been for me and all these, it was almost like a slideshow was happening in my mind of all these moments that he and I had shared together and what his spirit had actually done for my spirit and who
Yeah,
he
yeah.
really was to me. And I sat there for, I don't know, a good 45 minutes and I'm still trying to process it. Like I'm still trying to figure out what happened in there. And
Hmm. Do you want to spend some time looking at that?
I think so. I mean, it's funny
Well,
because you say that, and I'm like, oh, here's the choice again. Do I want to go into the room with a dead body? And I'm like, well, I guess I do. I guess I'm still there.
so we could talk about something else around this topic and Steve and death, or we could go into that. We can go back into the room. We can go into the room of your death in front of you.
Yeah, I think I need to go back into that room.
What's that part of you that you said you call it your adult that just said we're going in? What was for the sake of what?
To be with the full spectrum of life and death, like to not dodge the hard thing and to also honor his arc of a really well lived life and
Mm,
and to like see it and appreciate it and be inspired by it and also to feel like, admittedly, I'm a person that defaults to kind of, my husband would say, nauseatingly positive default. Like I'm like
NPD,
I'm
positively
like,
positive.
let's think of the glass half full all the time.
He's out of pain.
Yeah, he's out of
Look at
pain.
us gathering.
I'm
Mhm.
relieved. I've already
Yeah.
done that. But the truth is that sitting with his body, I just kept looking at him and I was like, when is Steve going to open his eyes? Like, when am I
Shoot.
going to, when am I going to get to see him? And it was just so impossible. It was this impossible moment where he is right there and he is not there.
And he's not going to open his eyes
He is
ever
totally
again.
there. And then he's not there at all.
Peter. Well, hello.
So what just happened was we were in the middle of a coaching demo and then our video shut off. and we got lost in cyberspace for a while, and then we just created a new place to record.
We were in the middle of you talking about being with a corpse of your dead friend and the feelings that arose, and this idea of your death and mortality is out there. And then we just got cut off. And my first thought was, I blew it. I somehow screwed up on how long this recording was supposed to be. That was my first thought. And probably that I screwed up your topic and did damage.
You're that. You thought you were that powerful.
Shut up.
I
I
mean,
am. Oh, I am only in ruining things. And I'm not just saying that because we're practicing being vulnerable. That was my first thought.
you're like, oh no, you screwed up. But
Oh,
I think the thing that's really interesting about this moment is the topic that I'm inside of is how incredible. Like it doesn't make sense. It's like impossible for me to understand how you can be alive one moment and dead the next. And
oh God, yeah.
I'm sitting with Steve's body and I'm like, where's Steve? And then, and then, and then just dropping off the internet. It's like, it's that fast.
Yeah.
It's that fast. And
Yeah.
I think it's just like my truth is that I'm still trying to figure out how to accept the finality. And even though we had been preparing for years for his death, it still felt so fast and so final and so impossible for my mind to.
It still feels that way for you.
Well, it
I mean,
almost feels
these are
more
not,
that way. It feels more that way because of what just happened on the Zoom room.
um, maybe oversharing. I don't know. Terry, my partner, and I just took this year-long class on mortality. And one of the,
Oh,
one, of- one of the, and by the way, I was doing leg day for a year to prepare for this moment with you. And we talked a lot about paradoxes of death. I thought I knew my way around this topic. And to be fair, I have some personal experience with it, blah, blah, blah. This was this whole other level. But this paradox of we all know it's going to happen. I'll speak for myself. I know it's going to happen. It can happen in any minute. And also, it's not going to happen for a long time. And I have a say on when that's going to happen. And I'm voting for it to be several decades out. And the purpose of the class wasn't for us to be forced to face it every day. It's to hold that paradox and how hard it is to remember that. And I noticed I liked it in theory, and then we had to do these exercises around it. I did not like it, especially with imagining Terry just dying all of a sudden. It was hard. Is any of that weird mental or even heart paradox, does that land for you?
yeah. It reminds me of this conversation that I had with. So when I was leaving the circle going into the room to be with Steve's corpse, a friend pulled me aside and she was like, he knew he was dying. He told people that he was going to be dying that night and he said goodbye. And we were just kind of like, how did he know? What
Oh,
what does it feel like to know your death is coming? What's the difference between suffering and actively dying? And
yeah.
it just really made me realize like, oh, I don't know shit. I don't know shit about the mystery of the way that the body stops being the vessel for
Holding.
whatever is in here, the spirit, the soul, the anima that like then leaves the body. Like I don't
So if you're
understand.
to if you're to amp up your visceral knowledge of you and your mortality based on what's happened, What's there?
I think what's there, Jeff, is this like urgency of, wow, we really only have, I don't know how long I have in this body.
Right.
And I've done all of this work for the last 52 years of like forming this personality and this like whatever. And now, like, what am I going to do with it all? And how do I honor? I think this is kind of at the core of it because I can feel it's like, how do I honor this life force energy so that when I'm where Steve is, I'm totally done.
Mm.
Like, I'm not
You didn't leave
leave anything on the
unfinished.
field, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's what's really present for me is like, okay, I really, really care about honoring that. And I'm like, what does that mean?
No, well, find some things that it means right now. I don't think it's just I don't know what that means.
Well, I just keep going to writing because like one of the, oh, okay, so this photograph above me is a
That
photograph
field.
that Steve, he was a photographer. And so one of the things
You
that
just happen to be sitting next to your underneath your dead friend. Did you put
seriously,
that there?
I have his photos all over the place, but I mean, he was one of my teachers and around beauty and sharing. And like he taught me about how to see the world through the lens of beauty and how to share it out. And I've just been thinking about
Wow.
his impact on me and I've been thinking about like I need to I need to crank this fucking volume. I need to get it out. I need to move what I see into the world with more commitment and determination and discipline because there's so much beauty and so much insight that's happening in here that I'm just
Yes.
hoarding for myself.
So if this video cuts off, if your life, my life, what if it happened to me right now? Heart attack, cut off,
Yeah.
yours cut off, whatever. What is the thing that you screwed yourself around and not getting out?
It's just like well, honestly, like you're an author. I can just see the books. I can see the books I didn't write. There's three books that I'm like, I don't
Tell
have
me the
time to write.
books. I don't have time to because I have to go to the store and whatever. Tell me the books.
Okay. So one of the books
Can I
is
push you a little bit and say no if this is a horrible idea? Lie back on an impending death position a little. I saw, what was that face?
I'm just like, oh God,
You don't
really?
have to do it. You don't have to do it. Will it help you?
I think so.
Okay. Books. I'm going to be on my little death chair.
So there's a book called Writing Ourselves into Place, and it's all about the earth and our relationship with the places that form us. That's one of them. A big book is a fiction book about, it's called the whale song, and it's basically rewriting the relationship of the genders and going back to the beginning when we lost trust with each other as man and woman and
I
rewriting
notice
it.
when you say that one, it almost, I can't tell what that look is on your face, but like sorrow or tenderness.
Yeah, I mean, it just feels so huge. And like
Okay.
I think so many of the ills and the dis-ease of the world is like going back to that moment where man and woman lost trust with each other. And like I think so much could be righted if we had a way back in right now, especially.
And it's like holding my breath as you talk.
They just honestly, and the third book is like this second book of poetry, and it's called Dive Deeper, and it's really about water. It's about water, and it's about the power of water and our relationship with water.
So you know how you said that death is actually right here for you, not out here. So let's say Death and Steve and you, the three of you, just heard you say those things.
Yeah, I just feel like, you know, there's just so much to create. And Steve and Death are like now, like TikTok,
TikTok.
like
It's just there's sternness there. Like
it's like move it. Like don't be thinking you can put it off because you don't have a clue. You aren't privy.
that's true, isn't it? You might have decades. It may not be anywhere near that, but you're not privy to that. That we don't. I think that's the thing that struck me too. I don't have the luxury of actually even having a guess. I have other luxuries in this life, but not that one.
And there's a saboteur that I'm just hearing that's just like, oh my God, that's so frivolous. That's just like, oh, what? You're gonna sit around while people are dying in Israel and Gaza and you're gonna like write poetry about water? That's the stupidest thing. Like that's so selfish and it's so pointless. And what the fuck? And it's
Oh,
not
sorry, I
yeah.
think Zoom is having me doing an update right now. There's a new reaction that it's reminding me because that was so interesting what your saboteur had to say there about.
Tell me more.
Because this thing that's happening over there in the Middle East, you can't get your truth out. It is a
My
saboteur.
but my truth just feels so honestly, it just feels so positive. And I have so much to like,
Yes.
I have so much criticism of how positive it is. It's like,
Oh. Okay, so show us on your camera that picture behind you. Tip your camera. What does that say?
oh, it just says, I mean, this picture for me is just a picture of belonging. Like I belong with the earth and it's just a golden field and it's a field that I used to play in when I was a child and I belong. I belong to the earth. And I
You,
really believe that. And
you do.
I really want other people to believe that because if we don't
Yes.
believe that, then we're not going to help the earth. Like it's not going to, we're not going to be able to be here for very much longer if we don't believe that.
I belong, you belong. We need to believe that to help the earth. If we don't, we won't be here any longer.
Not in any way that is going to be worth it.
So can you just say that you handled that shitty little saboteur message? I know it'll come back up again,
Yeah.
but that's more interesting what you just said. That's more connected to you than this fear that you're too, I can't remember that, whatever positive, toxic term you used. I
Yeah.
don't care. It's boring. I don't, not that I don't care that you struggle with that message. I don't care about that message because you just proved that that's not what's your most deepest truth. So what are you going to do with that little side tilt to your head?
I think I think there's like a okay, it's time for. And I feel like it's time for me to actually start to structure and get out of my brain the things that I'm thinking about for this first book about writing ourselves into place. Like it has to come down from here and out through my fingers and hands.
Yes.
And I feel like I need to do it and I need to get it out. And so um I'm actually thinking about like doing a writing retreat for myself. Like my whole family's going to be gone for like a week and I'm like, "Hmm, maybe that's my time to just push everything else out and just be like, okay, this is the time that I'm just going to download everything I know about this book and start
Yes.
to move it around."
Could we start when we hang up today?
Yeah.
And, and take that time on the retreat when your family's gone, but will you start today?
Yeah, what would that look like?
I don't know. Take 4 hours today, go somewhere where you can go and start getting that structure out.
I will do it for 2 hours
Two
today.
hours today.
Yeah. I have a whole bunch of stuff in my journal that I've written and it needs to get into the computer as like a beginning of like a document to start to structure.
Is that how you want to get it from here to here? You just made that
Well,
gesture.
yeah. I feel like maybe first I talk into it like using my voice.
Okay.
Um, and then I'll listen to my voice and then get it into the computer. But I want to have something in the computer and maybe I'll even send it to you this afternoon
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
to give
Yeah,
to
yeah,
give
yeah.
so that I have an accountability around it because I really have a lot of information already and it just needs to come out.
Um, in that class that Terry and I took, we were supposed to practice. What if this is the last time I'm going to say something to somebody? Is everything done between us? And it's like, yeah, yeah, it is. I got it. I got it handled. And we were practicing these things. We were going to a restaurant. We were crossing the street and a car was not looking. He stopped plenty of, I don't know, 20 feet away, but it was a slam on the brakes. Had he not, there would have been some trouble. I got mad. The driver got mad. We yelled back and forth a bit, got out of the crosswalk. And after that, we were probably 4 months into class. After that, it was like, I didn't have everything finished with Terry. I'm not ready to go. It scared the crap out of me. And it made it that much more real. The gift of Steve, this video being cut off, and of you being willing to do this and to have the deaf and Steve and you talk is this shit needs to get out now. And I know what I need to do. 2 hours today.
Yeah.
I guess I'm saying that to give you a little bit of a test, test feeling it like, is that the thing that has it be like, oh crap, I got to do that now?
Yeah. It just it does. And honestly, I would really love to hear like what would you say to me if you knew that you weren't going to see me?
Mm, that went through my head and I skipped it.
I could feel that.
I don't know if we're supposed to swear on this video.
Oh well.
Oh, my first thought is mad that you would put those books off. and torture yourself with the fear of it being too Pollyanna. I have read your work. You have taken me to the depths of conversation that nobody else goes. Never do I walk away going, she's such like a lightweight, positive flibbertigibbet. Usually it's because it's either you making me look at something or you looking at something. I would be sad that I didn't come up to Lopez and hang out with you because it made whatever more important. That's stupid. You've invited me like 2 full serious times and lots of other times. Also, you scare me because you're not lightweight. It gets real really fast when I'm with you. I'm probably chicken about whatever's gonna arise in hanging out with you and Lopez. You nod, you can tell.
Well, I mean, that's you. Most people feel that way.
I have a common fear.
It's a common fear. And my hope is that I'm more compelling than scary.
Oh, you're totally more compelling than scary. It's not like you scare me in an icky way. It's just like it gets real. Let me pause there, but but also extend the invitation to you. You're never going to see me again.
I think I would just say thank you because you what you have written and what you have done in your life has opened a doorway in my heart so that I can be with my family in a way that is way more playful and way more compassionate. I'm really, really grateful that you have taken the time to be creative and to tell your stories and to laugh with people because your laughter is just such medicine.
I think you're a little bit more gay because of me. I think
Probably. Probably. Yeah, it's
the
probably
gay
where
agenda.
the gay agenda comes through.
Oh, Lordy.
Well, now that I've cried off all of the makeup that I put on to look so pretty on this thing,
You knocked the coffee on your rug to
and not the coffee on the rug, I'm just like a mess.
stupid video cut off.
We don't even know if this video will ever make it.
No,
Like,
because
we have
it's
no
on my
idea.
account versus the account.
Oh.
Oh,
I think
um,
I think
to-
maybe like yeah, like wrap up the demo because like it feels like we just both died for each other and I don't know what else we can do.
it just died. I don't think there's anything more after that. Well, I'm aware of, you and I talked about, let's do this demo, let's do this thing, let's have enough structure, but we're going to go out of bounds. And I'm like, of course. But still in my mind, I knew what that was going to look like. And then this freaking cut off instead. Oh,
Ugh.
we just died for each other.
But like I'm just gonna pivot for just a second and talk to the people that might still be watching.
It's the 2 people that are still going to be able to.
Thank you for hanging in there, whoever you are. This
Thanks,
is
Jolene and Truman.
thanks, Tyler. No, but seriously, here's the jewel that you've been waiting for. I mean,
Tyler.
what if you never did get to talk to your client again? What is the thing that you would want to tell them at the end
Oh
of the coaching conversation that
God,
might
yes.
make all the difference to honoring the urgency of their life force energy? Because you're a witness. As a coach, you are a sacred witness to this life force energy moving out and through and into form and into manifestation in this life. And you might be their most revered and trustworthy witness. So what are you going to say, do? How are you going to be with them to get it into action and to make it real on a timeline that is not the saboteurs?
You just connected the dots beautifully. Like on some level it was so obvious, and on some level I hadn't made that connection to say, what if you never saw your client again?
And there might
That
be a
was good.
story. There might be a story that you want to tell them, or a thank you, or a challenge, or a truth bomb, or like, this is
An
how I really,
emotion to share.
yeah, it's like, this is how I really feel about you, and this is how you've touched me. It's like,
Yeah.
dare to be a human with your clients. We
And
need,
not pretend that you're gonna have sessions and sessions and decades or whatever.
and not pretend that your professionalism is is better than your raw heart.
Write that down, Jolene, Truman, and Tyler.
Tyler, Jolene,
Your professionalism is not better than your raw heart. You don't have to pour your heart out at that intense level in every session. But also, what are you waiting for? This lie of the luxury of time.
and on that note, curtain. Thank you. Thanks for hanging out with us. Hope this session has given you a fire under your butt to be more courageous and to
Yeah.
offer more of yourself more generously. And yeah, coaching is an honor, and don't take it for granted. You have a huge impact, and the more that you bring yourself, the bigger impact you.
We had talked about some tips. We've covered it. You don't need that. And honestly, tips feel like they'd be a way to avoid what you already know to be true. It's worth it to bring that level of courage and vulnerability for the sake of your client and also just for your own self respect. And I appreciate you hanging out with us today as we grapple with this topic with some unexpected events. We did not have the video cut off as a gimmick to surprise you all.
We
We're not
wish.
that we're
Would have
not that
been,
good. We're not
yeah,
that coordinated.
yeah. So enjoy your clients, enjoy yourself as a coach, and keep pushing your edges.
Keep pushing your edges. Keep rocking in the free world.